Thank you everybody for coming. It's a little bit, the weather is good and it's a little bit farther than usual, but thank you for coming. I hope that you're going to like it. Before I present the lecture, I would like to thank the company. Simon, you're going to do the presentation. Please go.
Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Simon and I'm working for Renewal. This is the company which is working here. So I don't want to have a long speech, but just some short notes who we are. We were founded in 2011 and since then we are developing custom web applications. So yes, we use different technologies and also Angular 2 or Angular NX. So I'm very happy that we can host this presentation tonight, and I'm looking forward. So yeah, enjoy it. Afterwards there will be there is hopefully enough beer for everyone. Yeah, we'll see. And if you are looking for the toilet, this is on the other part there. Just feel free. So
yeah, perfect. Sure. Thank you again. Before we go, also I would like to remind everybody that if you want to present a topic or you have a company you're interested on that the community knows the company, just contact me and we can do something. But I'm always looking for people who wants to present some nice cool feature on Angular. Good. So before we go in, what can I say about Thomas? We met here in the Meetup, right?
Yes,
we went together to NGConf last year. We had lots of fun. We already did a presentation together last year also. Or 2 years ago, probably.
And 2 presentations, but...
Yes, 2 presentations.
Yeah.
This is the second one, or
it's the third one.
This is the third one,
yes.
Man. Cool.
It's never enough.
It's never enough. The topic that you're going to present is based on block entry.
Yes.
I guess that you're going to talk about
yes,
this. I read it and it was very cool. And it had some attraction, so I asked him if he could present, and hopefully you like it. So yeah, big thank you and welcome to Thomas. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much. So again, thank you to Carlos and Renewal for hosting us today. And this presentation will be about the teaming of Angular applications, which uses Angular material as a component library. So yeah, Carlos already give a small introduction, but very shortly about me. So basically, I'm a software engineer now for a couple of years. Worked on smaller, bigger projects as an employee, as a contractor in a startup. Mostly focused on the front end. Also really basically front-end build tools like Webpack or before Grunt. I am pretty active on Medium, so writing some blog posts about the front-end topics, and also on my GitHub you can find some related stuff like starter seed projects or just some libraries for it to be used with Angular. All these links and also the presentation and the example project and also this example code which we'll be doing today will be then also available on the Meetup. We'll put some links so you can get it then later. Yeah, and as Carlos said, so basically this presentation is based on a blog post I wrote about the topic before, because when I got into first time into the Angular material component library, I thought this teaming capabilities is really cool and just stands out from what was available before. And yeah, it was pretty popular, so it seems to be that people are interested in this kind of topic because it has a couple of use cases which can be pretty useful if you have some support from the library you are using compared to if you had to do everything by yourself. So basically the library is Angular Material. It's the official component library which is also developed, I think, by parts of the Angular core team. And currently it's still in beta, so that means version is 2.00 beta 8. It has most of the components which you usually need if developing some applications, so buttons, selects, sliders, toggle buttons, overlays, whatever it is. And of course, whenever you develop application, it's pretty common that you will need these kind of components. And yeah, so why investing time in it while still preserving the possibility to create your own custom components? So it's not like once you start using the library, then you will have to fight it to adjust it to serve your purposes. You just use what you want, plus you are always free to create your own business widgets which like implement your business use cases. So yeah, of course this library, what they said is like they want to make it like a high quality. That means like they put a lot of effort in being consistent, support like internationalization and accessibility, and also like for example like this on push, if you know, in Angular, so like the change detection is set in all those components on push, so it's more like for the immutable data use case, so like it should be highly performant too. And of course there is a great teaming support. So this is how the website looks like. I recommend you to check it out. Like there is also like there are some guides how to get started, how to start with the teaming. But because it's still in beta, I found like the documentation pretty lacking when I tried to use it for the first time. And that was actually the reason why I wrote this blog post, when I figured out like some things which were just not obvious when you just use it for the first time, how to retrieve colors and stuff like this. So we will get into that later. Then, of course, on that website, you have basically like a component gallery where you can check all the components which are now available and the use cases from the basic ones to more advanced ones with the example. So you can kind of copy paste like the code snippets just using your application and just based on that. As I said, like they have most of them done. There is still like some ones like down the road, like in the pipeline. What they added as the latest was, I think, the data table which supported like sorting the data based on the columns and also like pagination. So that's pretty cool. And okay, so let's get to our main topic. So like the teaming, why we may want to have a teaming capabilities in our application, and how, like, why would we want to implement something like this? So like let's start with the most basic example. We are building an application for our company, or like where we are employed. And this company, of course, has like some design manual with the defined colors and the fonts and the logos and all these things, because it wants to present like some branding to their end customers. So, and that means if we are using Angular material, it implements like the material design, which is like the layout and stuff. But of course, like the colors will be some predefined ones, and we cannot really use that. We have to use our own company colors and schemes. So that can be like one use case. Another is we are developing like some software as a service product. So like with the multi-tenancy, so we develop a product and then we want to sell it to other companies, which in the end like are offering some services or some products through our product to their end customers. So there is also like a high probability that they would like to have a possibility to like customize this product, so that they don't use like one standardized solution, but they put their own branding on it. So this can be pretty useful. Another thing could be like, let's say we are building like a music player and we want to let users so that they have the possibility to personalize their experience with the product. So we let them have some themes like with the music player. It can be like, for example, based on which kind of music is playing. So it can be playing with the metal, or like rainbow with some techno, I don't know. Yeah, so something like this, and there could be possibly many other use cases like night mode. If you are building like some reader of a blog or something, and then like if you try to read it 3 a.m. even with the lowest brightness, maybe it's not the best experience. So the darker colors will just do it better. So there are quite some use cases to have a teaming support. And Angular material teams, or like the support there is like very flexible. All the native components will get the team you provide, and there is a great support also for teaming your own custom components, which are just like unique one of yours, with the same way as you would team like those native components in the Angular material library itself. It has a great support like for having multiple teams in your project, and also it supports like light and the dark themes out of the box with some predefined helpers in the SCSS or like the SAS. So, and when I was preparing this talk, I was thinking like, yeah, I can just make everything like at home and create like the slides and just put it and talk about it. But then I was like, maybe we can create like some small example live together. So let's see how that turns out, because I never did this before. At least never in front of people. So bear with me, and of course, if you have any questions, we will like go through these steps. So please feel free to like ask me, and yeah, we can clarify. And also at the end, there will be questions and answers part when you can like ask some stuff which is not related to what is happening right now. So first of all, we will use Angular CLI to generate our like a small example project. So I suppose you know Angular CLI, which is like a community-driven scaffolding and built around the Angular application. So it's also pretty cool that it gives you like a good production build out of the box. So we can do is ng new, and we can call it Angular material example. And what we have to provide is like the style flag, which we want to use as CSS, because with we have to like import like those theming mixins and stuff, so it will not work with the CSS. So we have to use Sals. And what we can also do is prefix, to use custom prefix for all our components, because application is called Angular Material Themes example, so we can use Angular Material Themes example. And this will create a new application, and it will install dependencies. I am online here, but by the way, what is a cool thing, I don't know if you use it, but I just discovered, which can be useful also for you guys, is like local npm, which is a proxy, which you can just run, and then it should just be faster. So let's see how long it will take. Hopefully not too long. But yeah, and Angular CLI, I don't know like how much experiences you have with it, but what I really like about it is that this code scaffolding, like it really adds up over time. So whenever you need a new component or a new service, but mostly with the components, the thing is like you have to create a template file, you have to create a component file, the styles file, the test file, and then just also provide like this boilerplate in it, and then add it to a module. And like with the CLI, it just happens, which is pretty cool. So you don't have to do it again and again and again. So the ventilators start running up, so hopefully it's installing.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I've used the CLI, but really just the beginning, so I haven't used it
Okay.
on a live project very much. But how does it deal with if you have multiple modules per functional area of the application? Does it know how to add it locally? Like, does it infer from, oh, you're in this directory, there's a module definition, let me add it right here? Or does it go all the way up to the application?
But on what level do you mean, like what modules are we speaking about? Like the TypeScript definitions, or like in Node modules, some dependencies, or like you have multiple applications?
Angular modules, ng modules, all over the place for multiple parts of the application.
Then that should be just like in the source directory basically, because like if you have a, that's like, if you have a CLI that is like one application in, but you can actually define multiple sub-apps, but it all lives in the SRC folder and it should find everything, so this shouldn't be a big deal.
No, but the CLI, when you create a component locally, say you're in module. So in my case, I've got 6 or 7 top-level modules. And then if you go inside these, so it's a functional area of the application. Yeah. And then if you're going into one of these and you create a component, does it add it there, or does it
don't really know, but let's get back to this at the end, because that's not really related to what we are doing right now, but it's a good question and we'll get back to it.
It does. You just have to put the name of the folder and it will automatically detect that it's... But let's talk about this later.
Yeah. So our application is running. So basically what we did is, the CLI installed all the dependencies for it, and we changed the folder to go into the application folder, and we just run like the development mode of the application. So and now I open it in my editor, smaller. So and here we have everything. And the first thing, but actually I forgot to do one thing, because we need some. So Angular material is not part of the Angular by itself, so we have to actually install it as a dependency. So to do that, we have to actually install it, which is install. We have to we have to save it for the later use in the package JSON. And what we need is Angular/material and Angular/CDK, which is a component development kit, which is basically like the core of Angular material, which was extracted as a standalone library, and you can use it for your own, like if you want to develop your own components. And Angular/animations. So I need these ones, and then I have to close this down and start again once the dependencies were installed. Okay, so that was fast. Good. So those are like the dependencies of Angular material if you want to use it. This is a good thing about the Angular 2 or Plus, that it's like out of the box is very small and very modular, so everything is basically opt-in. You have to really explicitly include those things, and then the bundle really grows only in a slower rate than if everything was included by default. Okay, so this seems to now to be working. So the first thing we have to do is import these things we just installed. So we have to import a browser animations module. And this is very cool about the TypeScript, as you can see, like you just start and it just finds in your node modules. So that's like one of the, actually not in here, but not in here. We have to do it in the app module. Okay. So we have a browser animations module, and then like if you want to use some material components, we have to import them one by one. Usually we do this in a shared module where you can import all the components used throughout your application, and also like if you do like your own custom components, then usually you implement them in a shared module so that it's available in the old feature modules in your application. But for the sake of demonstration, we will just do it today in our application module. So let's now import some Angular material modules. We will use MD card. We will use MD button and MD select. Again, all these three modules, like we import them from our dependencies, but we still have to provide them in our Angular application. So we have to put it to the imports part of our application module. Once we did this, we can use these components in our components templates. So let's adjust the layout. The layout was just generated by the Angular CLI, so let's remove the unnecessary stuff, which we don't really need. And let's add some basic layout for our example. We'll use a card, and the card will use standard HTML button, but with the MD raised button attribute, and we'll call it primary. And this MD raised button, so that's like a attribute which puts it as like a directive this material button, and it supports the attribute called color, where you can specify one of the three colors which are available in every Angular material theme. So we'll have a primary button, let's make it like this, accent, and worn. Let's see, and that's correct. There are no colors yet, and that's correct. Let's create another thing. We'll need another card, and there we will create MD select, and every MD select needs MD options, and let's call it like placeholder favorite animal, and let's put value cat, because cats are great, and cats, because cats are really great. There is no choice. So now we have some basic layout, and as you can see, it doesn't look that good yet. I mean, we have the buttons, they have some like shadow, whatever, but they don't really have the color, even though we specified it. And the drop down really doesn't sit down great and doesn't behave great at all, which is correct because like to use Angular material, we actually have to use it with some theme. And we can create our own themes, but there are also like some pre-built themes. So that's exactly what we are going to do right now. We will include some pre-built theme. So we went to the, as you can see there on the side, we went to the main styles SCSS file, which is applied to the whole application. And then we will import from node modules at Angular/material. And then we have pre-built themes. And then we have some themes available, like very weird combination, but this is how they decide, like indigo pink, deep purple, and okay, let's go with indigo pink. They have interesting taste, these guys. So, and it seems to be working now, so we got like these colors, and the drop down also looks a bit better than previously. And as you can see, it's animated. Another thing which you could do if you are really conscious about the size of your bundle is to, instead of browser animations module, you can use noob animations module, like no operation, but let's keep it animated because it's just much nicer. And we don't care. So we have this, and this is just a pre-built theme, and as you can see, this is a light theme. So that means like the backgrounds of the cards are white. Also, we can improve our layout a little bit by adding a space here. Great, so we have two cards, and as you can see, the background of these cards is white. So what we can demonstrate now is to use another pre-built theme, let's say deep purple amber. Okay, so this one is also light theme, so what else do we have there? Pink, blue, gray. And this is an example of the dark theme. So as you can see, like the backgrounds of the cards are dark now. The drop down also adjusts its color to play nicely with this. And this is provided out of the box. So if you provide your own color combination for the primary, accent, and warm, you can still use it like with the light theme helper and the dark theme helper, and like the backgrounds will just work for most of the components. And you can also implement this in your own components. Okay, so these pre-built themes, they are pretty crazy, but let's create our own. So what we have to do now, we remove like this pre-built theme, and what we have to do is import, I think it was it at Angular material team or teams. Let me see. Let's see.
Theming.
Oh, we'll see soon. And we have to include mat core. It seems to be that it found it, so it's pretty good. So this has to be included always only once, and it contains all the helpers we will need to create our own themes. So, and to create a theme, what we have to do is specify some variables. So let's call it my theme primary, and this variable is like this, and this will be mat palette. So a mat palette is kind of like the helper function from the Angular material, which enables you to get like the colors from what they are, what's available. So just to give you an idea, over here, something like this. You know there are better websites than this. Yeah, like this. So basically every color we will get. So there are like these colors like red, pink, whatever, and there are different shades of that color. And you can use all those palettes to select your primary, warm, and accent color from. And if you are not happy with what's available, you can define even your own palette, but we'll get to that later. So first of what we want to do, we have to get, I think like let's do the blue, matte blue. And we need to do this also for the other ones. So we have to do accent and warm. and the accent can be, for example, teal, and warning, so like let's say it's something which is standard, so red for errors and stuff. Once we have the variables, we can use those variables to create our theme. So let's call it my theme, and this one is Angular. What was it? Oh. Yes, let's create a light theme, and to create a theme we have to provide those variables which we defined previously. Okay. So this creates our theme, and it's still not being used, it was just defined, but to use it we actually have to include Angular material theme and pass our theme into it. And now this should work and we should see our colors. And it does. As you can see, the primer is blue, the accent is teal, and the horn is red. What we could also do, like now we are using matte light theme, we can use matte dark theme. So it's simple as that, like to change the behavior. And we will see that it's now was transformed to the dark theme. Okay, so what if we want to have more themes? Let's copy this and create another theme, so like my second theme. So first one will be still light, second one will be dark, and it can be like, yeah, purple and pink, for example. And here we also have to say it's all the second theme. So here, here, and we can set the second theme as a theme of the application. And what you will see is that the second theme now won. So basically the last theme wins. And this is not what we want, because that's like pretty not so flexible. So what we can do in this case is to namespace it with the CSS class. So we can create my theme CSS class and put this into, and another one which is like my second theme CSS class, and put the second theme into it. And when we now save this, you will see that we will get no theme whatsoever because the class is just not there. So one of the possibilities, then again, like now is the question like what you want to achieve. Maybe you will add this class during the build time if you have different build targets or build profiles, or if you are building some multi-tenancy application. So it can be defined on the build time. If you want to let your user like customize their experience of the application, then maybe you want them to be able to switch it during the runtime. And in this case, it's better for the presentation, so we are going to do that. So first what we want to do is we have this app component in which templates we are using this stuff, and what we want to do is to create a property on it called theme. And here we will say by default is my theme, because that's the name of that class where we namespaced it. And what we want to do is to basically wrap everything in a div and add this property on that div. So, and we want to bind class to the theme property. Let's see if that works. Yes, it works. So the my theme class was provided. So if I open now the developer tools, put them down, and select this theme, we should see here now that the class my theme was provided, and this is why we see the theme. So what we can now do is to convert this favorite animal to theme selector and put there my theme and my second theme. Thank you. So and we want to use like ng model for this, like for the simple demonstration. What you can use is like reactive forms, whatever you like, but like for the demonstration, we will just use like a simple stuff. We want to bind this select to the team property on our component so we can switch them, but this will not work because we haven't included. Let's see it fail. Actually, looks pretty failed. And this is because Angular is like so modular that really everything you use you have to import and include by yourself. So like the bundle is really small to start with. And what we are missing is the forms module. So we have to add a forms module. So import forms module from Angular forms. And we have to import that too so we can use it. And we are back. Cool. So this should now work. And as you can see, this works now. We can switch the theme, but maybe you notice that the select is actually broken. As you can see, it doesn't have a background and like the text looks kind of funny. And that's again like on purpose because the select is a type of component which is like overlay component which creates some new layer, which is this selector about the standard layout. The similar component is, for example, also like the dialog. And to make those work, there is a helper in the Angular material on which you have to basically specify the same namespace in class as you specified on this div. So what we did here is that we have this class theme on the wrapping div. So of course everything inside gets themed, but this overlay is not in that DOM subtree, it's somewhere else, and because of that we have to explicitly set that class on that too. And to do that is pretty simple. What we have to do is to import overlay container from the Angular material, and we have to inject that into our component. So we are injecting the overlay container of the type overlay container. Make it a little bit better, not so big screen here. And what we have to do now is to set this class, which is in the team property, in the beginning and also every time the select changes. So to do it in the beginning, we will use onInit interface on the component. And the great thing about the TypeScript should again provide us with the implementation of the interface. Amazing. Don't have to write. Just love it. And on init, what we want to do is to set the theme class on the overlay container. So we get the reference to overlay container, and theme class is called is equal to this theme. But this will only work in the beginning, and whenever we change, it will still be broken. So what we have to do is also on our select component, we want to listen to the change event, and on theme change handler. And we could pass some stuff into it, but it's not really necessary because we have it already in the property because of the model. So we just need to listen to the event, and whenever it changes, what we want to do is basically the same. We just want to set the new theme value on the overlay container. Okay, so let's see what happens. Compiling takes time. Okay, so now so as you can see, like the select has a proper background, and also the dark theme just works. So as you can see, like all the components will now work. One thing which is very nice about the Angular material theming is that when we define those palettes here, we said like which color it is, but I showed you previously that there is actually quite some shades of those colors. And that means that this mat palette function, it has some defaults which it takes, but you can actually provide your own. So if you look into that function, then you can see you provide the base palette, which is basically like this blue or red or whatever, and then you have the default shade, you have the lighter and darker shade, which can be pretty useful when you want to theme your own custom components. Let's say like you have a dark blue background and light blue text or something like this. So and this is, they thought about this use case and it's available there. So if you don't provide anything, you roll with 500, 100 and 700. So it corresponds to here 500, 700 and 100. But you can override those values. So let's see how it will behave. We have here our blue, and blue looks something like this. So let's make it darker by default, by like 700, 900 and 500. And as you can see, like this button got just darker. And like now it's really not that useful, but if you make, let's say, light blue background and the dark blue items on top of it, this can be pretty useful. So you have like full control, even if you define your own palette based on your company's design manual, you can have full control on which shades are used where. And we will see that later when we will theming some custom components we will create shortly. So now what we can do is to extract this in a special folder. I mean, you can have it inline, but once you have more themes, because maybe you have a lot of customers or whatever, then you can just to keep it like nicely organized, you can create a separate theme file. So you can create my. What? Ah, sorry. Yes.
Via the three values, are they for different states of the button?
These values.
700, 11, 500.
No. As I said, like we are getting. So it's the primary variable which holds the primary color of the theme, and we are getting the primary color out of the palette. So here you can see it's the red palette, or like let's get the blue, so that we have it one-to-one. So this is the blue. And if you just don't provide anything, it will take the main shade, which is 500, and the darker shade, which is 700, and the lighter shade, which is 100 from this palette, which you can see on the side. But you can override those values to provide your own. So if you want the default start like darker, you can put that you start with 700, and then even darker than that is 900, and lighter is 500, for example. So this will be useful later, because when you are theming your own custom components, then you can retrieve those variables, the color variables, so you have your own special widget, and you want to make it primary, which means blue now. And for example, you want it to have a dark blue background and light blue text. Then you can retrieve those variables from your theme and say, I want my primary and I want my primary lighter shade and the darker shade to create the contrast.
Okay.
So this. Yes. So this is the use case for it. So now we want to extract these themes into separate files. So my theme SCSS and my second theme SCSS. And that's just basically to reduce the clutter, because we have already quite some things here. So my theme goes here, and my second theme goes here. And now we have to again import it, because then it will not work. So import, and go to themes and my theme, and go my second theme. And this should still work. And it does. Okay, so this is how you can add potentially unlimited amount of themes, and you can switch them during the runtime or during the build time if you basically somehow set a variable in your build and then you add this class by some templating or something. You can do both things. So what now happens if we want to create our own custom components and we want to use the same mechanism to theme them, which is the whole point. So for that we can use Angular CLI again, and we can use scaffolding mechanism ng-generate component in example folder with the name parent, and let's add it to the module app module. Great. This generated us another folder with the parent component with all the files which are necessary, and as you can see here, like the selector is prefix which we select in the beginning, this empty parent, And to use in a template, we basically just have to put it here. So let's create another card. And let's put here empty parent. And let's change the layout of the parent so that it's nice. Something like this. And we have another component, which is our own custom component, very basic, which just says parent works. What we can, so the styles which are part of the component, you can put anything. So for example, div, and let's put it padding 20 pixels, and let's put a border 1 pixel solid. And these styles, which are kind of part of the component, that means they are in the component's definition in styles URL, they will be kind of namespaced in such a way that they will never bleed to other components, because they just get like some randomly generated prefix ID, so they will always only apply to this component. But the theme, on the other hand, is defined somewhere external in the main style sheet. And there are some things which we have to take concern about when we are doing this, so that our styles doesn't bleed out. But first, let's create a theme for that component. Another thing which is very important is to always only put the layouting styles in the main styles file, so like the sizing, the paddings, the floats, positions, whatever, but never use any color. Every time you use color, you should only use it in the theme styles file. So let's create that file. Parent component SCSS, and this is kind of not the official convention, but I pretty like it because it puts these files nicely next to each other in the editor. So what official one is like something with the underscore parent component theme SCSS, but this works and it's like next to each other, so it's pretty convenient, but feel free to call it however you like. So, and how to do this, it was actually not really documented, so the way I figured out was just to check how they do it. And what they have here, like when we are applying our themes, there is this Angular material theme. And when we look inside that, we see that it's basically a mixin which applies this theme to all of the basically custom theme definition for all the material components. And this is something which we want to do too. So we can copy this and use it here. And we can call the mixin my custom component. And the reason for that is, if you
want to end there?
Yes, please, thank you. So the reason to do this is to not to have to repeat it in every of those like namespace selectors, because if you didn't do like a mixin, then every time you add a custom component, you would have to put them in all of those themes, and you don't want to do that. You want to put just one mixin. So let's see how it will look like. What we're just gonna do is this, and here we will call it example parent. So, and here we have like our first custom component, which we haven't created yet, like the theme, but when we have more, we potentially can add much more components here. So if we have the parent, we have the child, we have the dropdown, we have the widget, we have whatever. We don't want to add them, all of them in every of those. We just want to add them in this one place, and then this mixing will apply to all of the namespaces. So let's now create this one again. I don't really remember how it looks like, but it's not a problem because we can check how they did it with their own components. So let's say this is like some dialog, and we cannot really go in, but maybe we can go here. No, we can't. Unfortunate. Okay, so we cannot go in, doesn't matter. But what we can do is, I think it's a mixin, and the name we selected for the mixin was empty parent theme, and we know that it accepts the theme variable. And what we also know is that we have to import Angular material helper. Good. So this is basically a mixin which is then used here. This file, again, like for the parent component, we create a custom theme file which contains a mixin, which we then use here. And then this is applied in our theme because we pass our theme colors in it, so we can use it to theme that component. We'll get to that, we will see. We also have to import it. So we go app, example, parent component theme. Okay, now we have everything. So again, to recapitulate, what we did was we created a file, like theme file for our parent component. We imported it in our main styles file. Then we included that mixin which we defined in this file in here, and then we use it as our theme. Sounds like a lot, but you will see it's okay. So, and how does we can use it to theme it? So we get a theme, and theme has a colors, so we can get these colors to use it to theme our component. So let's, for the sake of example, retrieve all the colors which are available. Primary. To get it, we do map get from the theme, and we want to get primary.
So map, isn't it?
Exactly. Thank you. Primary. Then we have accent. Then we have born. Then we have foreground and the background. And with these colors, we can use these colors to theme our component. So our component, the layout is just a div and h1. So what we can do is to, and of course it's all wrapped in its selector. So we can copy the selector. It's like a CSS selector. So what we start with is the selector of the component itself. And in the component, we have a direct child div. And in that div, we have a direct child h1. And on h1, we can specify a color, which is a normal CSS color. So what we can do is not color, and from our primary color. And let's see if that works. And it does. So this is the way you basically can retrieve the theme color in such a way that you don't have to like pollute like your layouting styles, and all the color information is always only specified in the theme file. And you have access to the all colors in the theme, and whenever you change the theme, this will update automatically. So now the primary color is purple or pink or whatever it is. So as you can see here, we have a div, we have h1, and we just take the primary color. And now what we can do, as I said, as I showed you before, that when you specify the theme, you can specify those numbers to get you like the lighter and the darker shade. So what we can do now to demonstrate it, that we use primary but the lighter shade, and as a background of the div, for example, background color, we can use again primary but the darker shade. And this should create us some contrast so we can still see the text. And this works. So this is the use case when those shades can be useful. For example, in the footer, you want to have like some signature which is not like your eyes are not bleeding, so you can just create a less contrast. So this is the use case for it. Or you can do it the other way around. And even like default, you can write default, but actually, even if you don't write it, by default, it's a default. So as you can see, it's the same. So this is how you can create your own custom theme components, which will behave basically the same as the own native Angular material components, following the same theming behavior and just work, which is pretty cool. Another thing is like this foreground and the background, which is actually related to the light and dark theme which we spoke about in the beginning, which has some other variables which were undocumented, and basically the only way you can get them is to read the source as of now, and I will show it to you later. Yes, please.
Would you be able to show again where you put that padding, so that physical layout?
Yes. Yes.
Which file is that?
So yes, the Angular CLI generates you by default 4 files. The component TS, as you can see there, the component spec TS, which is for the tests, component SCSS, which are those scoped styles for layouting, and the component HTML, which is for the content itself. So when those styles in this component CS, the SCSS, they will never bleed out to other components because they are namespaced by the unique ID, and you can just go fully barbaric there, not use classes, nothing, doesn't matter, just like divs, P's, whatever it is, like it will just work, you will never have any problems. But when you use themes, those are behaving like a standard CSS, so you have to be very specific with your selector. So as you can see, I was very specific. I said like the component selector, then this is like the thing is just a direct child, so only the div one level under and only h1 one level under. And we will demonstrate very closely how this works, like that the theme will not bleed into the child's component. So let me create a child component. Just again, extremely simple. Child, yeah, just like this.
But it means then that the theme, for that particular component ends up being split in two.
Yes, because one is the layout and one is just the colors. And this is the good thing because it will still look somehow normal, like it will have the proper shape and like organization on the page, but then the colors will be just some defaults of the browser, because you need to use theme if you use Angular material anyway. And it uses completely the same mechanism, which is pretty good thing. So now we created the child, and the child has selector and the child, so we can use it in our parents template. So let's change the child theme to be the same. H1, child works. It doesn't sound so good, huh? Child works. Anyway, so, and now we want to use this component in our parents template. So let's copy it in our parent and put it here.
How would you do if, like I worked on a system a couple years ago where the spacing and so the shape of the panels, the cards here was really regimented very strictly across the entire application. And so
well, this you have to, I mean, they make it consistent in their library, and if you implement your own custom stuff, you have to make it consistent. There is not yet, I think, solution which can just make this for you, unfortunately. So you have these, I don't know, 20 components out of the box from them, and they bring in more, and they make sure by hand that they are consistent, and they are following these material design guidelines, and if you implement your own, you should kind of follow it by yourself. So, and as you can see, basically now the child has completed the same template as the parent, but the H1 didn't get the color because we did a very strict CSS scoping here, so like only the direct children. If I removed this, it should get color now, which is not what we want. And this is why you always should do like as specific selectors for theme as possible. And then you will not have a problem because it's namespaced by the component itself. So it has to be the direct child of the component, which is never the other component which works. Another use case is, which I think you said the last time, when you have the transclusion, which is a bit different. So what you can do is, transclusion is basically if you put some HTML elements, let me show you. So we have a parent, and we can put some HTML inside of the parent, so like this, which is the same as it was transclusion in AngularJS. So let's do like some transcluded stuff. And this will not work because we have to, just to get the transclusion, we have to provide a directive in the parents template, which is called ng content. Exactly. And now we'll get it. And as you can see, this is blue, even though, I mean, it's an h1 which is somehow coming from outside. It's actually in the app component template. It's h1, so it's not in the parent, but it still gets this style, and this is not what we want. But there, fortunately, is an easy solution for this. So what we can do is actually, again, break like the specificity of the selector. It's not the nicest thing, but we can just do a wrapper div. We call it, ng content. It's not the best, it's not the worst, because the ng content itself actually gets removed from the DOM. So it's not there, there is just h1. So it's not like it's double wrapping or anything like this. It's just, so like the DOM looks like there is just this h1, then there is this child, and there was another h1 which was transcluded. So, and if you wrap it, then you break the specificity, and it works. But now we have another problem, which is it gets the border because it's just a div inside, which is completely correct. But as I said, like in here you can go full barbaric, so it doesn't really matter. So you can call it whatever. You shouldn't, but you could. And do it like this. Here. Plus. There. And it has no meaning. So yeah, this is like the thing. I mean, it's a trade-off because you could do the theme files which are completely scoped to the component. So you would here have not just the parent component as CSS, but you would also include the parent component theme as CSS, and it will be completely scoped. The problem with that is, if you do it like that, is that you duplicate all these Angular material helpers for every component, and you don't want that. So you want to have like the theme which just works centrally and it's easy to change only in one place, and the layouting styles which are completely scoped to the components. So yes, this, and yeah, this just works. Another thing is, which is now currently missing in the official documentation is, well, this you can find on some other websites, and here is like how it works. So there's like main colors, accent colors, and contrast colors. Contrast colors are actually useful if you want to have a text. So let's say we have a blue background, and on blue background, like as you can see here, is like a white text. So again, you don't want to hard code this white, you want to retrieve it. What would that mean is, as we did in parent, we can do like background color and do the primary. And then what we can do is the text, the color of the text of this h1. So now we will not see it, of course, because it's the same color, but we can do primary and not just lighter, darker, but also contrast. And no, something is wrong. Or is it? Oh, it's default contrast actually. So it's default contrast, lighter contrast, and darker contrast. So you can even specify that on that level, which is pretty nice. So yeah, if you have this kind, so they thought about all these use cases, and it's just all there, and it's very, very flexible. So that's one thing. Another thing is, so this is exactly what we're speaking about. So as you can see here, you have every team has this default lighter, darker, and default contrast.
We have to specify it above the
This
background.
Is, oh, thank
Yes.
you. That's all bad. And this is also bad. But we didn't use it, so we didn't use it. Yeah. So this is correct. So now, of course, the text is just black and the background is just white, but then this will work. So you'll get automatically like the support for light and dark themes. So this foreground and background, you actually don't specify yourself in the theme. It's just there, and it's for these light and dark themes. So yeah. So those are the things which would be very nice if they made like more easier to find like in official documentation. It's really missing when you want to do these custom themes. You really have to go into the source to figure out like what are actually the names of those variables, but it's possible, and I suppose they will add it later. So yeah, I think we made it. We're to the end. It's not that bad. Yeah. Okay, so what did we learn today, or like what was in the presentation? So we spoke about like what is the Angular material, what it can bring to us. We created like a very simple project with the Angular CLI where we basically added the dependencies needed to work with Angular material, and we created like some very simple layout. And in that layout, we then demonstrated that actually you need at least some theme to work with Angular material, and that Angular material comes with 4 pre-built themes, 2 of them like light themes and 2 of them dark themes. Then what we did was we created our own custom theme definition where we specify which colors we want to work with and created a theme out of them. And then we created another theme, and we saw that actually they will not work together unless we namespace it with the CSS class. After that, we realized that we can actually change this class dynamically during the runtime, so to provide like the theme switcher. And after that, what we did was we created our own custom component and used the Angular material theming support, theming in the same way as the original Angular material components are themed to. So it's following completely the same patterns. And then in the end, we learned like what are the possible caveats, what we have to take care of, so that our theming styles don't bleed through the DOM tree into our children and other components. Also, as a part of this presentation, so there are some links. There is a link to the Angular material. I will post this project on the GitHub, so I will also add that link. There is also example repository I will show you in a while. Blog post, and yeah, you will get some video from our good guys from Renault. So I will add those later, and then Carlos will put all those links on the Meetup site so you can check this. The start to project looks something like this. I put it on GitHub, like it's also part of this blog post, and I will show you it also live. And it has like basically it's Angular with Angular material, with already like built-in theme switcher, and it uses NGRX for like the state management, and it uses actually Bootstrap 4 for the responsive layout, but only the responsive grid, so you actually also can modularly include only the parts of the Bootstrap which you want. But actually in the future probably I will migrate to Angular Flex layout, which should do the same, but is like from the Angular team. So I was just like many people know this MD, call, whatever classes which are used for the responsive layout, and it's very easy to work with, so I use it by default. So let me show you that very quick. So this is it. It's also like with the animations. So and you can see like which versions are used of what libraries. And there are some small examples. So for example, like a to-do list, whatever. You can delete the to-dos, you can filter them. That's more like for the, okay, if I do like this, it's more like for the demonstration of the NGRX. Then there's also like a request, so you can get like some stock. It also like the canceling, so it's like this type ahead, and it auto cancels the request, which is like the cool stuff about the NGRX and RxJS. And there is actually also explained how this theming works. So like what you should do and what you shouldn't do when you don't want your teams to bleed. So, and also like some very simple like sign in, sign out, nothing really. And the theme switcher. So we start from nice blue, and then we can go to light, something like this, or like this, and we can go to black. You know, with the crows and it's so dark. Yeah, so, and this is how it looks like. Yeah. So, feel free to check it out and use it. There's like also some people, I got like pretty good feedback like on the Reddit, so people like it. So, and that's it. Hope you enjoyed the presentation and that you learned something today, and yeah, that you had a good time. Questions, answers, anything? Yes, please.
So big thank you, because I just started learning English lately, and I understand all this stuff. So I'm pretty happy that you have it.
Yeah, it's if you are just starting, then maybe there was like too much at the one time, because it's just many things. Like I mean, like it's well known. Like everybody says, like the Angular has a very steep learning curve. So, like the TypeScript, Angular CLI, SAS, whatever. Like it's many things. Then like NGRX for state. It's a lot, but once you get into it, then you become like extremely productive.
Yeah,
So that's like
the examples are not up to date, and it's different from.
Yes. Also, like this is because it's evolving, but I think like it's always like it's a very good time investment, like to invest in Angular, because I mean like also React and all the others, they are okay, but you have to build like your own framework on top of that. And once you learn all these things, how they work together, you can just really focus on delivering your business features. So it's just it's I think like time well spent, because then you just become very productive.
So one more question.
Yes, please.
I tried to use the flex layout.
Okay.
And I also saw different examples, some work, some not. What is the minimum imports on stuff?
Don't know. Actually, I haven't used it. I used their Bootstrap, so because I was just like I knew these classes from the Bootstrap, so like it was very convenient. But I should switch later. So
it did somehow work, but for the responsive stuff, the flex direction didn't switch.
okay.
And
Unfortunately, don't really know about this. So yeah. Yes, please.
It's not really possible to put auto stuff besides colors inside the theme variable, right? At least like for your own custom elements, even like the Angular material.
Well, you could extend it, but then you would have to kind of rework. Like you would have to wrap those original mixins with your own, which have more variables somehow.
Yeah.
But out of the box, if you use their mixins, they just have those variables. But I can very well imagine that there was like this.
Let's say I want to put in some like border radius or some stuff
Yeah,
inside.
exactly. Yeah. So let's look into it. So what we are using here is when we are defining the theme, we use this multi-light theme, and what it does is just specifies like those variables. So, but you can create your own function, like my multi-light theme, where you can pass more variables and pass it around. So this could work. Yeah, definitely. Anything else? Then that's it, Carlos.
Yes, that's it, please. No, thank you very much, everybody. Let's meet the next meetup. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.